it would be honestly radical if more people in the fitness industry asked these important questions. How can we make it more inclusive? What can we do to knock down the barriers? And I'm not talking physically, I'm talking emotionally, mentally, verbally, and being able to adapt.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Chrissy Van. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by the British Columbia Personal Training Institute. Learn how to train, gain, and retain clients. Visit bcpti.ca. December 3rd marked the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Ahead of this, one of our followers, Pat White, reached out. Pat is in charge of Member Appreciation Day at Fitness World in British Columbia, and she's an avid gym enthusiast with an important perspective to share. In this episode, we'll learn about Pat's life with a rare bone disease called Hadju-Cheney Syndrome. This rare genetic disorder can cause a severe reduction of bone mass, among other symptoms. In addition, Pat lives with epilepsy, and the combination has resulted in some of her most significant challenges in life. Pat reached out to me because she wanted the opportunity to share her story with those that operate health clubs and gyms, and for those that share these fitness spaces. Her willingness to be vulnerable on ATFW invites us all to change our lens of perspective and begin to ask ourselves the questions necessary to create positive change when it comes to cultivating more inclusive gym spaces. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new content weekly with the ATFW podcast every Wednesday that features industry thought leaders and influencers. Plus, we just launched bi-weekly Monday episodes called Exercise Snacks Bite-Size Science, where you get to learn about the latest research in fitness and wellness from the researchers and scientists themselves. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW. First of all, I'm so stoked that you reached out and were willing to pivot the date, because
absolutely.
All of a sudden looking at that, I was like, this is such an important conversation to have. And I do want to say, I feel like it's not your responsibility to educate us. People should be doing the work themselves to educate. So right out of the gate, I'm acknowledging that. That being said, I'm really happy for you to share from your own lived experience and the fact that you work within a gym space. I'm sure that you are more observant over things most of us are. So thank you.
I think what it is too is being on the other side of it, because, having a physical disability, I was saying to a friend of mine the other day, I don't feel I have a disability growing up because, my parents were my mom was more so like, make sure you don't do this, make sure you don't do that. Where my dad's like, oh, just go for it. You've got your 30s and 40s to, be crippled and weird and all. I was a daddy's girl growing up. I did everything for my dad. I just wanted to be with my dad. My mom and I, we didn't have the greatest relationship. I'm like her twin. Kind of one of those things, growing up with a physical, I don't want to say limitation, because like I said, I was able to do a lot of things, being on the other side of it now, because my legs don't really work anymore, because I had a seizure and that ended up breaking both my hips, my back, my knees, my ankles, everything. So I was in and out of hospital for 7 years. And so I got bullied a lot growing up. A lot of people from elementary and high school, I actually talked to some of them now, and some of them have apologized, being like, hey, you know what, I was a jerk in high school. And I don't hold grudges. I don't think it's, it's wasted energy holding a grudge. And I think the most important thing I can do is try to just show people like, hey, I've been on both sides of it now, where having a physical disability, the way I see it is being in a wheelchair, you can't let it define you. And so I think the whole purpose of being able to share my story, speak my truth, and have a platform to do that is to let others know that just because you have, whether it's an invisible disability or something that you can be seen, you can't let it define you. Who cares what other people think? As long as you're happy with doing what you're doing, and you may have to tweak a thing or two, but do what you need to do. Make sure you're doing it for you, and make sure you're happy doing it, because, pardon my language, but everybody else can just fuck right off and just do their own thing. Just to be blunt, I don't pussyfoot around things, straight shooter, and I'm loud, I'm obnoxious. Like, you hear me in the gym, you can hear me, but you probably won't see me. Like you'll hear me and they'll be like, oh, there's Pat. Somewhere over there.
Firecracker. Well, and I think that's like an important quality anyways in life that takes a lot of us a lot of time to learn, right?
Yeah.
Finding our voice, advocating for ourselves, being a
Yeah.
straight shooter. There's a quote from Brene Brown that I've always loved. To be clear
Oh, I
is
love
kind,
her.
to be unclear is unkind.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do have to be exceptionally clear or else
Mhm.
nothing ever changes. But often those feel like the harder conversations to have. So the fact that you kind of managed to master that skill set
Yeah.
is going to serve you so well. And also, not that it says that it puts people in their place, but definitely
Mhm.
brings things to attention that perhaps they would have missed otherwise. So that
Yeah, and I think
kindness that you're doing is changing behaviors that need to be changed.
well, and the thing is, being an able-bodied person, you're sometimes not aware. For example, when I moved into my new apartment here, I had a stove and the dials were on the very back. Now I'm 4'1". We've established that. Two friends of mine that I met at the gym, they literally brought a tape measure because I kept saying I was like 4'6", and they're like, "No, we're gonna measure you." And so we've established and confirmed that
Mythbusters.
I'm actually 4'1", which is hilarious. But I had dials on the back of the stove, and even on my tippy toes, I still couldn't reach. And so I reached out to the executive director of my building and said, "Hey, look, it's a safety concern, and I cannot reach." Within a week, I had a new stove with the dials on the front. And she sent me an email and she was like, thank you for bringing that to our attention because we're not in the same situation as you are. So we wouldn't have understood. So the fact that being able to bring awareness and help people understand, I mean, there's a thing that I really like. It's called fear. So fear is FEAR. So you can either forget everything and run, or you could face everything and rise. And so that was something,
Love that.
yeah, and it was great. And a lot of this too, like I've learned a lot this year. I mean, it's not my best year, but I met two beautiful ladies at the gym at Fitness World in Langley. And, I've never had friends challenge me in a sense of like my personality, when it comes to boundaries, learning about different personalities. And, my love language is touch. And I love being outgoing. I'm a hugger. I never used to be growing up, which is really funny. But now, I love seeing people and it's being able to hug them and embrace them and stuff. But meeting these two ladies, one of them really taught me that, learning about capacity and boundaries and trying to match other people's energy and being able to understand, just because the way that I love or the way that I perceive things, they're not going to be the same way. And, I've been very blessed and lucky to have these two ladies in my life because I've learned so much from them. They've been with me through some of the toughest times that I've had and have helped me learn and acknowledge that, okay, you can either sit in your shit and, wallow in it, or you can sit with it, deal with it, move forward. Because if people continue to sugarcoat things and, again, pussyfoot around everything, then you're not really going to learn anything. And so
I
that's
agree
where,
with this so much,
yeah,
not to interrupt
yeah,
you there, but
no, all good.
at this like similar age in my life kind of thing, it's
Yeah,
like harder to make new friends, or at least that's
yeah,
the perception for a lot of people. And it's
yeah,
through the motorcycle community that I completely met this incredible group of women
yeah,
that, for the first time, exactly as you're saying, challenged me. For me, it was
yeah,
vulnerability. I really struggled being vulnerable in any
yeah,
capacity. My wall was so high. And to
yeah,
me, I kind of put that mindset on a pedestal, even though I
yeah,
didn't even see how it was not serving me until I had people that finally started to challenge that narrative, one that I
yeah,
had married so deeply. And then you start to peel away different layers of yourself and
yeah,
your perspective starts to shift, or you may have a similar perspective, but you're able to zoom out and appreciate another person's as well.
yeah. And I think, just being accepted for me and my personality, I'm generally very happy, but when I get pissed off, it. So, and sometimes I have to put on that brave face, but like if I'm in the washroom, like at work or something, change the room, or if I'm here at home, I'm just ready to like, yeah. I'm not the type of person you want to piss off. And, you know, um, because a lot of, I've had experiences where people will judge me and they'll be like, oh, you do this. And like, I've been called a midget. I've been called a retard. I've been called every name in the book. And you know what? Some of those words still get used to this day, where anybody who uses it, I find sometimes they may not be aware. For example, there's a comedian, and I'm all about humor, but when I lived in New Westminster before I got injured, I was at the Heritage Grill. We were listening to music, having food and whatever, and they were posting photos and whatnot. And so on Instagram, I noticed that the Heritage Grill had been tagged in a photo. And so this comedian, he had posted a photo, and then we had actually done a funny photo where this 6'5" person was next to me, and I'm 4'1", and I'm like looking up at him, and he's like, "Oh, look at the midget behind me," and I was just like, right away, I could feel that fire. But what was interesting is how many people commented under that photo saying, "Hey, you know what? You can't be using that word. That's not okay." And I actually reached out to that person and I said, "Hey, this is me in the photo. I don't appreciate you calling me a midget. The proper term is little person." And I'm actually not even a little person. I'm not qualified. Like, I guess you could say, I guess the right word for that is, but I'm not qualified to be a little person. But I just told him, I said, it's really disrespectful. I don't appreciate that word being used. This and that. And then he responded in a very respectful way. He's like, "You know what? I'm so sorry. I'm glad you brought that to my attention." And then he even told me that another friend of his gave him crap for saying that, and he deleted the photo. And what's interesting is we actually became friends after that. And I think it's great to be able to give the awareness to people. And for those that want to acknowledge and understand that, it's amazing. I mean, this world is getting better, but this world is getting worse, if that makes any sense.
No, for sure. Well, and I think the nice thing of the example that you give there is that they were able to receive that feedback without doubling down. Because sometimes when you feel that moment of shame, then people react with their emotions that aren't in check and kind of react poorly to the feedback, even though it is the correct thing. So I'm so glad they actually digested it, acknowledged, learned from it. And then, as you said, kind of the most beautiful ending to that, a friendship born on the other side from that clarity and honesty. So that's, and as you speak, in the world today, especially, yes, there's a lot of good and a lot of awareness, but there's another completely opposing tone that is out there and a lot more accessible in social media landscapes.
And that's the thing too. And like, even in high school when I got bullied, oh my goodness, I got shoved into lockers. I got pushed up against walls. I got called names. I got gum put in my hair because they weren't. And then I finally, in grade 10 to 12, I finally started standing up for myself.
It's like this human behavior. If we don't understand something, for some reason, we like villainize or create so much judgment inside instead of just having a conversation with an individual that would provide so much clarity over their experience. We kind of organically jumped in here from the beginning, and I love that so much, but I do want to just educate people. What is the disease that you were, I guess you would have been born with?
Yeah, so it is genetic. So it's not like I hug you and you're going to get it. But it's called Hadju-Cheney Syndrome. And so basically it's very similar to osteogenesis imperfecta. So your bones are very brittle. I don't have a lot of bone density. My bones, so like when you take an x-ray, your bones are pretty much filled in. Where my x-ray, you could see right through the bone. It's almost as if like the bone isn't even there. It's an experience, and you just kind of got to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, if you sit there and wallow, you're not going to really get anywhere. And then just from that time on, I didn't know I had a seizure issue. I had these weird things that would happen with my head, and I would kind of zone out for a couple of seconds, and then my head would hurt. I would get a little bit of a headache, and I would feel a little dizzy. And then I would get really quiet, and it happened over time. And then I really started to notice it when I worked for the YMCA of Greater Vancouver. And then when my mom passed away in 2015, 2016 is kind of where things started to really happen. And I woke up one day and I couldn't move, and the fire department had to come to my house. And I lived in a house where as soon as you close the door, it automatically locks. So they had to come up the stairs with a ladder, and I have my door, and it's got the glass on the top of the door. They had to bust open that glass, take like a rod and push down the lock of my door so that they could get in. And then I would toss my keys up to them, and they would unlock my door, and then they put me on this chair thing and try to go down 2 flights of stairs in that little chair thing when you're just in agonizing pain in the pelvis area. So we get to Royal Columbian Hospital, and they found out that I had fractured my pelvis. So I was in the hospital for a week, and then I was at Queen's Park Care Center for 3 weeks doing the rehab. And so I was back on crutches. I was able to go home. Then lo and behold, I had another seizure. And this time I couldn't move at all. And so the same thing happened. The fire department came, and they found that I had broken my hip. So I had to have hip replacement surgery. And it was quite funny because I got a little trigger happy with the medication. So what they do after the surgery, they give you an IV, and it's filled with hydromorphone. And then they give you a little remote. So every 6 minutes, it disperses 0.5 milligrams. Well, I was just clicking that thing like it was just nobody's business. And then it got to a point where I was singing, apparently, because I was so loopy. I don't remember any of it.
Own little karaoke performance.
Yeah, it was great. It was perfect. And then so my surgeon came in, and he said, this is what's happened to you. We've given you another hip, and then we repaired the left side. So the fracture on the right side ended up being broken. So he said, you're losing a lot of bone density. As you get older, I was on vitamins, multivitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C. I was taking my bone shot every 6 months. I take Prolia. And it just didn't seem that anything was working. And then so he's like, you also have epilepsy. So I was like, oh. And he's like, this is what's caused all of this. And I was like, okay, well, a little bit of colorful language came out. But I was really upset. I was angry. So I was like, why wasn't this? Yeah, it's, why wasn't this found before? But then again, I didn't know what was going on. So after that, I was back in the care center. It was established that I couldn't continue to live where I lived because I wasn't able to do stairs anymore, and I wouldn't be able to walk. So I ended up moving back to Langley. I'm in a bottom floor apartment. And then it was just seizure after seizure after seizure for the next 6 years. So I was in the hospital. I had a seizure. I was in the washroom. And so I get home health that comes in 4 times a day. Thank the Lord, I have that help. And I had a seizure. And luckily for me, every morning I wake up, I always unlock my door so that they can come in. And my home health worker, and I literally owe her my life, she found me on the toilet, slumped over, glasses on the ground. And I had gone to the washroom, and it was all over. I had had a seizure, and it was a huge struggle to get me into my wheelchair. And we got to the hospital, I was in the ambulance, and I ended up with a spinal fracture in the lower bottom of my spine. So I was in a Ninja Turtle shell brace for 3 months that summer. And I must have sweated out my whole body weight because they would take the brace off, they would switch me into a nightgown, and they would literally take my shirt, go to the sink, and wring it out. And it was just devastating because there was a occupational therapist that said, she looked at my x-rays, she's like, you're never going to be able to walk again. Right then and there, I just started getting really emotional. I remember going to my room and just crying. And then my friend had come to visit me, and we actually met in the hospital. Her dad lived in my building. Her dad unfortunately passed away, but we became really good friends. And she'd asked me what had happened, and I told her, and she's like, she told you that? And I'm like, yep. I remember she blasted that occupational therapist, and then my doctor came in right after, and he's like, what happened? And I told him, I said, the occupational therapist said that I would never be able to walk again. And he's like, she has no right doing that. And my doctor went and blasted her as well. And then he came into my room, and he's like, you do not listen to anybody except your orthopedic surgeon and me. And I'm like, okay. And I wish she was in front of me today because I could show her that I could stand up and take a couple of steps. So it's being able to take that negativity and turn it into a positive and not really let it be all consuming of your emotions and your abilities. Yeah, it's taken me a long time. Like I'm moving around, I have seizures every now and then. I've winded up back in the hospital. I just had surgery a month ago, which was a dream come true, finally. And that's another thing too with having this rare bone disease is that people want to tiptoe around you. If you hug me, I'm not going to break right away. I mean, I've had friends that have squeezed me a little too tight on accident, and I've, popped a rib here and there. I mean, I had my friends little girl. She's so excited. She kind of ran into me and she actually broke my rib. And
Oh
it was
my
so
gosh.
funny. Yeah, she's just such a cutie. But it's all, you take it all in stride because there's really not a lot known about Hadju-Cheney syndrome. And so growing up with it, it's like Down syndrome. People with Down syndrome, they all look alike. Those of us with Hadju-Cheney syndrome, we look very similar. I mean, my mouth is probably bigger. Um, I have no filter, but you learn to really accept and really adapt. And that's the whole thing that I'm trying to do with the fitness industry is if you've got limitations, we can tweak it. So I think the fitness industry really needs to ask themselves these really big questions. How can we be more inclusive to members or to staff? Or if there's, I know you recently interviewed Chris Smith, the CEO of Fitness World. I mean, he was actually the first person I talked to. And I told him, I said, I applied, but nobody seems to be wanting to give. And he's like, you know what? Here's my email. Email me. We're going to get you hired. Amazing. And so it was an amazing feat, and I still have his email here. And,
I love that.
Yeah. And, he's an amazing individual. And it was funny because when he first came in, I didn't know who he was. He was like, do you work here? And I'm like, no, but I've been trying to. And he's like, oh, really? And then so we had a conversation about it. And he's like, oh, well, you seem to be very capable. And so that's when he wrote down his email and he said, we'll get you hired. So I was very grateful to be given that opportunity and to be able to show what I can do. And I'm grateful for it every day. And so I think more awareness needs to be done in the fitness industry. I mean, it's a huge part of my life because it's helped me get back and into where I want mentally. I mean, it's a good mental capacity builder. I mean, a lot of people go to the gym for their mental health.
Yes.
We celebrate mental health every single day. You could be waking up feeling the worst thing, but you could have that hour or two at the gym and feel on top of the world. And I've grown to learn that from people at the gym. I mean, there's another individual at the gym who used to use a walker and now he doesn't use one anymore. And it's such an incredible feat to be able to see, so if there was more awareness about the gym, that being able to be in a gym, whether you're using a mobility device or not, it impacts you the same way. It boosts your mental health. It boosts your mental capacity. It boosts your mood. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're there for you. You're not there for anybody else. And if you're there for somebody else, then there's something wrong.
It's so true. Being connected to that appropriate why.
Yeah.
And I must say, huge shout out because I have scrolled your feed and seen your reels and you're like pull-ups, this, that, and the other. You're putting like 90% of us to shame. It's like every single one I was going through. I was like, she is crushing it in there. But it's exactly that. I mean, I love that you speak to the fact that there does need to be this narrative shift. And I think it's happening. Like, I'm sure if you followed the podcast, I talk about this a lot. And I think I contributed to it negatively a lot when I was younger. I mean, the goal, I grew up in an era of like a mom that was perpetually on a diet, and it's like this diet culture. And then that's all people associated these spaces with. Whereas for me, I like the reason why I even started this, like I had a dad who was chronically ill their whole life, and his body never was able to do everything that I know he wanted it to do. And there were limitations there. And for me, I know there's this like incredible mental connection that happens, and every bit of grief and struggle and how I said connecting to that vulnerability and emotion before I knew how to let it out, the gym was the only place I knew where to let it out. And I think the more people understand that capability, I mean, I do think that it's better to do the personal growth and let out your emotions in all different ways. But it takes time to learn those skills. But it is, and then the community, like you spoke about those two women that you met there and how that's transformed so much of your life, having them within your community.
Well, and that's the thing too. And, I mean, I annoy the crap out of them, but, they've really shown me a different side, that there are people that are willing to accept your physical limitations and what, and I get told all the time, like, they don't see the chair, they see me. being at the gym, being in your element, knowing that you're safe there, knowing that you're being accepted, knowing that if you are not able to do something, that there are people there that are able to help you either tweak it in a different way or are willing to help you. Like I climbed my first set of stairs at the gym about a year and a bit ago with the help of those two ladies. That was a huge goal. You know, they have their own thing that they do. They're very friendly, they're very kind, but they like once they're in their zone, they just go after it. And that's the same goes with everybody else. They're in their zone, they're in their groove, they go after it, they kick ass in the gym, you know, and you're feeling pumped and good when you come out of the gym and you know you're finished your sets or your workouts and everything. So I think it would be honestly radical if more people in the fitness industry, you know, ask these important questions. How can we make it more inclusive? What can we do to knock down the barriers? And I'm not talking physically, I'm talking emotionally, mentally, verbally, and being able to adapt. Because I think, you know, there's some, like, there's a fit, I won't mention the name, but you can't even get in there. And they look at you like you've got three heads. You go in there
because
and
I
you
was
want
going
to
to say
inquire.
on that note, what is
Yeah.
kind of like your best advice for, because we do have a lot
Yeah.
of gym owners, health club operators. So through that lived experience, what
Yeah.
are kind of the top red flags that should be addressed?
Basically, it's more so when you go in there and let's say you want to sign up for a membership and they kind of look at you like you got three heads and are like, oh, well, right away without even acknowledging or wanting to learn, it's like, well, we don't know if we can help you. Or we don't think the equipment's going to work for you. Well, let's make it work. You know,
Yeah, because
there's a
that's not
lot
a
of
you
like,
problem. That's a them
no,
problem. That's the
exactly.
them
And,
problem.
you know, that's why fitness world has been huge with that, especially Langley, because there's a lot of space. And of course, I know what I'm capable of doing. I know my body better than anybody, just like you know your body better than anybody. I know what I'm able to do. And if I want to challenge myself, I'll do it a little bit here and there. Um, you know, and I think, you know, it's not a question of um, can you do it? It's how can you do it? How can you make it adaptable to you? You know, I see, you know, that one member, you know, when he was using the walker, he was able to fix everything so that it was attainable for him to achieve a goal. And where myself, you know, I would do a couple of classes, like the works class. I mean, that's a killer class, but it gets you all set and good. It's like a high intensity interval training
Lot of sweat,
class.
lot of
Yeah,
sweat.
yeah, and it's good. You know, it's good to get it all out, and there's a lot of good trainers that do that. Um, and just being able to figure out what works better for you. But I don't think, honestly, it's anyone's job to question why you're at the gym. Who cares? I'm not at the gym for you. I'm at the gym for me. It's my money that I'm paying. So who are you to question me? Well, why are you here? Well, we don't think you should be here. We don't think this is going to work for you. And that's the word think. Sometimes people don't think before they speak. Mind you, there's a bit of an age gap. And so there's more learning that needs to happen. And, you know, we're in a generation now where there's a lot of learning going on. The possibilities are endless. Gym owners or anybody working at a gym needs to remember we're people too. We're humans. We deserve the right to be treated as such. So what if we need a little bit more help or we have to tweak things that works for us? Who cares? We all deserve to be treated the same. What I care about is the respect. And as long as there's that commonality that we respect each other on a level that's needed, whatever that is, then I think things can be groovy. But if you're just going to, you know, as soon as I come in the door and you're going to be an ignorant prick, well, then we have a problem.
Yeah, it really, the education component, the
Yep.
curiosity, asking the
Yep.
right questions, and really
Yeah.
these types of conversations that should come from the top down and engaging with your community. And I did kind of
Hmm.
start this off by saying I acknowledge that it is
Hmm.
our responsibility to do the work. It does not
Yeah.
fall on, but I do think that it is important to engage community and ask the questions from those that are willing
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
empower yourself with that knowledge and then create a space that does feel welcoming to everyone.
Absolutely. And I think what could happen more too with, fitness industry training and stuff, they should have compassionate training in there as part of their, I guess, training package, if you will. Inclusivity needs to be a big one. Um, and, like I said, I've been lucky enough that the fitness world location that I'm at has been really good with that. My chair is a pain in the ass sometimes, and I got to park it, kind of out of the way for everybody else. Able-bodied people need to be able to get through as well, but I'm just like, well, okay, just jump over the chair, like,
You're like, box
but
jumps have gotten an
yeah,
upgrade.
exactly. Instead of using the SpongeBob SquarePants box, just jump on my chair.
Yeah.
But it's also the cool thing is too is I've been actually able to integrate my chair into my workout. So like when I do the planks, I do my planks on the chair, or I'll do
Right on.
even the push-ups on the chair. So it's been really cool. But then I've been downgraded. I've been able to get myself onto a weight bench to do push-ups, to do tricep dips, and just to be able to incorporate like a good arm workout with that. So it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of progression. It's a lot of figuring out what works and what doesn't. And it's trial and error, to be quite honest. And, sometimes you're going to get people that look at you funny, but then you get people that come up to you and be like, whoa, like you just did that. And I've had a lot of that happen, and it's been amazing. Like you can thrive off of that positivity. And then you're going home and then it's like, well, hey, I did this, but it's like, wait a minute. That person came up to me and said, hey, I didn't know you could do that. And it's like, never judge a book by its cover.
Yes. Well, and
So
it's positivity and also that spark of inspiration that you're putting into
yeah,
other people. And I do encourage people to have a look at your Instagram page
yeah,
because, as I say, if you want a little bit of motivation to get off
yeah.
the couch that day and get moving, you are full of it. You're a spark of energy. And I just so appreciate that you connected with me with the
Yeah,
willingness to give me insight into your world
yeah,
because we all
absolutely,
have different
absolutely.
lived experiences. And this is how we learn. And it is
Hmm.
so important. And you emanate this positivity. And I also like that you've got that like good tone of grit as well.
Well, we
Which I
actually
just
had somebody come into work once, and like when you whiten your teeth, and this was hilarious. We just ended up like busting our guts in laughter, and his teeth were really white, and he was saying like, "Yeah, I had my teeth whitened, and they were a little too white." I'm like, "Yeah, your teeth are brighter than my future." And it was just a burst of laughter, and it was just incredibly amazing. And it's like a community and relationship that you build, and especially a lot of them are regulars, so you can joke around and you can just be whatever. And then you've got those others that are, you kind of got to match their energy, sort of read the room a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, it's a great environment. I invite you to come to the Langley Fitness World location and see, and then I can show you what I'm talking about, because seeing, okay, I don't want to sound too cheesy, but
I
it's
love
kind of a
it. Lay it
line
on
a
me.
line from the Santa Claus movie, but Tim Allen is
One of my faves.
seeing is believing.
Yes.
So I don't want people that are using a mobility device or anything like that. Like I said, my chair, the wheelchair doesn't have to define you. Your
Yep.
walker does not have to define you. Your cane does not have to define you. Crutches, all, and I want people to be able to get out there. And if they experience some negativity, I don't want them to crawl back into a little shell. I want them to know that, hey, there are other people out there that do experience this, but this is what we can do together to bring forward more knowledge and be able to expand everybody's minds. Because like I said, you're never too old to learn something new. It's just being able to bring forward awareness. And there's that word team, TEAM, which is together, everybody achieves more. And like I said, fear is one of my favorite ones. Forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. The choice is yours.
I love that. That's the perfect
Yeah.
note to end this on.
Yeah.
Cue the music. Like that is
Yeah.
golden. I love that.
All right, Christy.
Take care, eh? Have a
Take
good
care.
one. You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Chrissy Van. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.